You're listening to episode 29 of Producer Talk with Bassclef. Now, today's guest is Daniel Fowler, a genre-blending producer whose sound fuses Daft Punk with Justice, Complextro, and Japanese city pop with a modern emotional edge. Now, in this episode, we dive into the deeply personal story behind his newer album, Alive, out now on Neon City Records, how he turned grief and loss into powerful creative fuel, the pivotal mindset shifts that helped him stop chasing perfection and finally start finishing tracks he's proud of, and how structure, community, and feedback helped him level up his mixdowns and sound design. Daniel also shares the influence of his late mentor, Jeanette Slack, how their connection led him to take Pro Sound Secrets, and why that changed everything for his music. So if you've ever felt stuck chasing a perfect mix, unsure of your sound, or like your growth is plateauing, this episode is going to hit home. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Daniel Fowler. How's it going, man?
Thank you for having me on the show, Stu. I'm very well, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here, man. Looking forward to this chat. For anyone that's not familiar with your music completely just yet, how would you personally describe the kind of music you're making right now?
Okay, so at the moment, I would describe, for someone who doesn't know my music, as a fusion and blend between something like Daft Punk, Justice meets like Complextro meets city pop, Japanese city pop specifically, which is like Japanese disco music from the 80s. So combine that all together and you get what I make at the moment.
You get Daniel Fowler. Exactly.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, man, it sounds amazing. All the stuff you've been doing, especially the recent tracks you've been releasing, and it's great to see them all out there on Spotify and everything as well. They sound unreal. How did this style come about for you?
So I've always had an interest in a lot of different styles of music. I'm going to go into a little bit of history in terms of how I grew up with music, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
So initially, a lot of what I was listening to was influenced by, obviously, my parents and my family at the time. And I have an older brother, Ben, and he was very much into metal, new metal, back when that was a craze in the early 2000s. And I basically would just listen to everything he listened to. And then it wasn't until, I don't remember when exactly, but Daft Punk was on his iTunes and I stumbled across it and I just went, what is this? And I felt the first time in terms of, out of all the other times I may have heard electronic music, that was kind of the gateway for me to really just become so addicted to that sound. Mm-hmm. And I would say later on, I started, listening music casually on and off with other stuff, punk and kind of early pop stuff. But it wasn't until I heard Maud Fustang, who kind of was a proponent for making electro house very popular, at least where I was in Hong Kong at the time. And of course, that led me listening to like deadmau5 and other things. But it then sort of spurred on this genre of Complextro, which was coined by Porter Robinson, I believe. And that's the kind of stuff he was making at the time. And just before then, around that time, I had also heard Justice Cross and that album.
So good.
Amazing album. And I was just blown away by the sound design. And of course, Skrillex was a huge influence as well. And I think for me, a little later on down the line, I kind of dabbled into listening into a genre that came out called future funk. And future funk is an offshoot of another genre called vaporwave, which essentially takes kind of old 80s music and makes it really reverbed and slowed down. That's a very kind of rudimentary way to explain it, but that kind of then became future funk. And I'm sorry for any other future funk enthusiasts that say, no, that's all wrong. But I heard some of that style, and very similarly, it was sampled music and then put some heavy beats on it, very funk infused. And I think the biggest influence, I would say, to this style of combining all of that together was probably the Noisy Freaks. And I don't know if you've heard of them, but they essentially took, funk music and elements of like glitch hop and other bass music and styles, electro house, and sort of brought that all together. And it wasn't until I got involved with more artists from the future funk scene that they were asking me, would you be interested in collaborating? And I, looked at what I love making in terms of, bass house and a lot of bass orientated genres, and just thought I might as well just infuse this and put my own sort of twist on it. And that kind of, it started off as a remix. And then it just sort of became part of my style. Anytime I worked with anyone, that I would just take the sample and then add unnecessary bass noises to it.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that kind of explains how I came to writing within that style and genre.
Yeah, and also kind of what kind of sparked the initial flip the switch for you for dance music in general too, right? And I mean, I've heard you do a bunch of styles over the years as well too. Yeah, I really feels like you've found your groove with the sound and everything at the moment. And it's funny the way you describe it. I completely agree. It's like, yeah, so just do a bit of unnecessary remixing, but it sounds amazing. Yeah, and it's got that kind of Complextro remixed, modern yet vintage edge to it. Where does you said there's another influence into it too? It was kind of like 80s Japanese music or something as well, right?
Yeah, so Japanese city pop.
Japanese city pop, that was it.
Yeah, was the name for it. But it was, of course, influenced by the West at the time when disco was so huge around that time. It was basically their take on disco music. A little bit of lore about future funk. The kind of aesthetic that it tries to bring in is a lot of anime. And I love anime. That's a big component in terms of influences as well. I love anime music and video games as well. Even within genres, how there's subgenres, I felt there were levels of subgenres of Complextro where some of it was more like in your face and really heavy. And other times it could be quite digital and like video game-esque. And in that instance, probably one of my biggest influences is Savant and how he approaches music in terms of looking at all genres and not just, one or two things. You can be influenced from different spaces and really pick out what you like about those genres and really implement them into new sort of interesting creations. And I think that's really a big proponent to how people find their own sounds. What I think helped me a lot in my producer journey.
I agree, yeah, and I love the way you've put together your sound like this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you're just pulling together the things you love, and that's what I recommend too, right? Like, so I love this, I love that, I love that. Let's just do all the things I like, right? And for anyone out there that's wondering, like, trying to find their sound or figure it out, sometimes it's just like, yeah, trying out some sounds and seeing what things you'd like and don't like, and keeping the bits you do like and staying away from the bits you don't, right?
Absolutely.
Sound about right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And now your stuff sounds super unique as well. Like, yeah, I mean, sure, there's other people doing types of Complextro, but like you say, there are subgenres of it, and you definitely got your own take on it. It's very cool, very cool. And there's a new album project coming up you were telling me about earlier, right? Tell us more about that. It's called Alive, right? With Zy Cohen?
That's right. So Alive is a very special album that's coming out tomorrow on the 25th of April. I'm not sure when the podcast and the video comes up, but...
this will probably come out so it should be out right now. If you're listening to this, it's probably
out right now. Yeah, right, of course.
It's out right now. In the future.
Right. So Alive, and I should talk about Zy Cohen first as well. I met him through doing Future Funk. Initially, I had collabed with an artist called Lunescence, and they had reached out to me and asked, are you interested in, doing a couple songs for an album? And I just thought, sure, why not? Which then sort of was the domino effect of people seeing, oh, you were on this album. We're going to try working with another future funk artist. And that would happen to be Zy Cohen. And he's got quite a decent following in the community. So also very, very hardworking, has more or less put out an album every year since when, I'm going to mess up the dates, but for the past maybe 3 or 4 years, maybe even more than that, consistently releasing. So I've actually already done a few projects with him, but was also on a previous album called Ocean View, which was released on Neon City Records, which is a label in Hong Kong, which is quite funny because now I live in Portugal. And I had spoken to that label about sending a single to them, and I just never went through with it. And I've now managed to end up back on the label, but not completely adhering to the style of future funk either.
So what, you knew of them when you were in Hong Kong, and
that's right. I even went to one of their events and I spoke to them like, oh, what you guys are doing are amazing. And I was following one of their artists, Night Tempo, who's really big in the scene. So yeah, they're quite well known within the community. And I just might as well say this as well about the future funk community and just the importance of finding a community and how much they really believe in that, and all the other artists who make the music have such a passion for it, and how they all help each other and work together. I haven't really explored many other scenes, but to me it seems like it's really tight knit and a lot of producers work together, and that's also leading on to what I'll talk about later with the community you have here in.
Yeah, community is important, right?
Yeah. But sorry for jumping around.
All good.
Going back to the album and Zy Cohen. So, yeah, he asked me if I was interested in doing the album, and I said yes, absolutely. And it actually started off as something else entirely, which a lot of projects tend to do, over iterations and ideas evolve. We both, this is quite important to the story, is we suffered a loss both in our lives. And for him, it was his mum. And for me, although it was around 2 years ago now, I lost my first love, Jeanette Slack, who you met as well.
Yeah, long time ago, but yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And so off of that, the original album wasn't called Alive, but it was, I don't remember the other names, but it was something like, cybernetic and kind of influenced by the sound of like Madeon and that kind of style. And so he was really in doubt about whether or not he should put the album out at all, because it's a departure from the style of music that he normally does in future funk and is more aimed at like new disco and maybe some like funk and R&B, and obviously with my touches of Complextro. But yeah, it's really a passion project, and to really look at the very harsh fact of life and truth which we all go through, which is loss, and how we've been able to use that as a means of exploring our feelings and emotions towards grief, and how music has helped both him and I to a coping mechanism to kind of navigate through that. So I'm getting into my emotions a little bit.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good. No worries at all. It's an emotional thing. How did you guys approach something that emotional and personal through your music?
Really, it was both of us, when they say a shared problem becomes halved. And I think it's important to be able to kind of share these things, safe space, and learning that the process of grief doesn't have to be, even though it is very challenging at the time, that it's not going to be, incredibly painful all the time, every time.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is. And it was the encouragement of both of us just sort of really wanting us to like better ourselves and improve ourselves, learning how to move forward and to be able to cope with these things and with the reality. I feel, without music is such a time capsule for different things. One, it really encapsulates feelings of a certain time in that person's life or an event. And just as there's different genres of music, there's also different genres of emotions. And for me personally, I really felt like music was a very helpful therapy tool to be able to navigate, just if I was feeling upset, that I would be able to just translate that into like certain chords or certain feelings. And this album is very much on the positive aspect of like cherishing fond memories and really able to put their legacy of their lives into this music and celebrate them and ourselves for being able to be open and vulnerable to, because music is a vulnerable thing. You have to put everything that you do, you put yourself into so much music, whether if it's just a good time or like a heavy bass line, it's still you. And I think we've managed to achieve what we wanted to achieve with this album.
Amazing. Congratulations, man. And yeah, I agree. It can be very cathartic and can be like a form of therapy and definitely a form of expression. I truly believe music is the language of emotion, right? People can listen to a song, and even if they don't understand the words being spoken, sometimes if it's a different language, you can feel the sentiment and the feeling of the music. It's transmitted, and it can be a way for us to release and share emotion and express it in a way that maybe sometimes we couldn't say with words too, right? So that's amazing that you've taken on that project and done that so well, especially for someone so special to you as well. Tell us more about Jeanette's influence on you and your impact on you and your music and everything.
Right. So I'll start with, I know I kind of talked about my musical influences growing up, but another important aspect, me getting into metal and all that sort of stuff, was picking up the guitar. And the reason I picked up a guitar was because of Guitar Hero. And because I love video games, I remember my brother saying after he came back from uni, he said, "Oh, you got to try this Guitar Hero game. And when you do, don't start on easy. Yeah, you got to start on medium." It's like, yeah, sure, okay. And I remember that after I first played it, I fell in love with the game and I got to expert. And I remember thinking, I have gotten pretty good at this game. What's beyond expert? And I realized picking up a guitar was probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, play a real guitar, yeah.
Yeah, so of course that then started another proponent of my musical journey where I really just became addicted to playing the guitar. And yeah, I would basically, I think my first teacher, I believe I still remember his name, was 16 or 15 at the time, Mr. Carrington, and he taught us country music. And, it was all country roads.
Oh, yeah.
Take me home, and all that sort of stuff. And I think it was like a month or two into it when I started looking at tabs, which for people who don't know are just sort of like online kind of notation for guitarists who can't read sheet music at all. And it just gives you the numbers on the strings and where to place your fingers. So from that, I really got into electric guitar and acoustic guitar. And I found out the acoustic guitar wasn't just for playing country music, but you could also use it as a drum set and like do all this finger style stuff, which I really, really got into heavily. So even then, this was before I even started producing anything, but I was still kind of listening to stuff. And I remember when I had heard Skrillex, I was just thinking, how on earth does he make those sounds? And I installed Ableton. And I looked at it and I went, this is something else. I don't understand what any of this is. Didn't even look at a tutorial. It just looked like, the Da Vinci Code, and I was trying to figure it out. And it wasn't until they spoke about massive and sort of synthesis, and before I even started making music, I was just fiddling around with sounds and how to make them do all the stuff that I had heard, although terrible. But, it was a start. And I then got into uni and I wanted to do theater. I thought theater was my direction. I actually was very passionate about being an actor and, going on that sort of trajectory of life. And during uni, I was still doing guitar and music and sometimes performing at the local sort of open mic nights. And this was all in Aberystwyth. And I remember every time that they had asked us, the teachers, to make a performance, mine was always based around sound and music. So I had this idea where I'd make a performance based entirely off of just sound, and the audience would be blindfolded and they would sort of go through this experience of just like closing their eyes and touching and feeling things and hearing sounds to, at the time, sort of talk about like memory and how it affects how sounds can trigger memories and how that creates vivid imagery in your head. So it's like having a play inside your head, but the experience is entirely based on the individual. Because you can play the sound of the sea to anyone in general, and they'll have a different experience based on what they've experienced in life. And I really wanted to hone in on that aspect of like memories and what that does for people. So based off of that, you know, I was still probably making little silly beats with my friends in uni. We kind of would get on the guitar and maybe make our own little like silly songs. And I tried to show my friends how to like make little bass sounds, and we even made our own little song, but nothing was ever released. And now this is leading up until after I came out of uni, and I was 21, and my brother had invited me to go out to a night to see a DJ. Didn't specify who it was, just said that their coworker was a DJ, and I was fully expecting a guy in like a baseball cap with dark tee playing techno or something. And plus my brother never goes out. So I felt like, oh, I have to, if he's going out. Anyway, of course, the person that I meet, the DJ, he goes, "This is my friend who's the DJ." And it was Jeanette Slack. And I remember shaking her hand and saying, "Nice to meet you." And she kind of went, yeah, and did her own thing. She was working. She didn't have time to say hello to everyone. But I remember specifically about that night was all the genres that she had played. And I was totally geeking out. I was going, oh, she's playing Jamie Berry, Octavia Rose, and that's electro swing. And she's playing electro house, that's Dead Mouse and Wolfgang Gartner. And yeah, all these different songs that were coming that I'd never heard in Hong Kong. So I was totally thrilled and just going, say to my brother, "You have no idea how important this is. This is, no one plays this here." And of course, because he saw my enthusiasm, how excited I was about, hearing all this music, he got me my first DJ lesson with Jeanette.
Amazing.
And of course, she would hate me for saying that I was a student first and foremost before we, got to know each other. Yeah, I think after that, we really got to know each other, and, a friendship built into a relationship of us caring a lot about each other. And she really saw how she saw the potential that I had, because I struggled a lot with self-confidence and believing in myself as a person, which of course translates to everything that you do. One quote that I'll say from my friend Doug, who I also worked with in Hong Kong, and we do Electric Mirage together when we used to do events in Hong Kong. But he used to say, "The way you do one thing is the way you do everything."
Well, and that those kind of self-confidence thing is actually pretty common in the music and artistic world.
Yeah. So she really helped me with that, just in terms of how she carried herself, because she had already built an amazing repertoire of, her achievements, and where she had really stamped a name for herself in the breakbeat scene. She was, after all, known as the Queen of Breaks, and quite rightly so. A very well-deserved title. And she really encouraged me to take music more seriously. She helped me post my first ever song that was released to the world on her label, Slack Tracks. And it was a remix of her song Lost. And I remember at the time, she was yelling at me and saying, this was such a quite an emotional song for me, and what it means to me, Lost. And you turned into like this really happy disco, fun, yeah, kind of track.
That's what remixes are for.
Right. And so I think that probably, started me on this path of really putting my own influences and interests onto songs, because just of what I found interesting. But yeah, she encouraged me. At first I was, DJing, but then I went to SAE. She went there and she said that what they do there is very professional and, industry standard. And she spoke about how Apple and Logic was the way forward. And at the time it probably was. But when I went there, they taught Ableton. So having transferred all my knowledge from Logic to Ableton was a little bit tricky. But yeah, once I went to Ableton, it made things possible. All the things that I could do. I was able to do a ton of stuff.
Yeah, like the name.
And so, yeah, after SAE, there's just been like a continuous sort of passion for doing music. And that's how I met other students like Douglas Black, like I mentioned, and sort of other people within the scene as well, and how they were all encouraging me. And this is then going into community. And she really was my mentor at that time as well, sort of guiding me through some processes. And it wasn't long after that she mentioned that she knew you and talked about what a great teacher you are. And because I said, oh yeah, she asked me what I was up to, and I was like, oh, I've decided to look into taking some courses from Bassclef, Stu. She's like, oh yeah, I know Stu, I know Bassclef. He used to make breakbeat, and I was like, oh no way, and showed me some of your old songs, and she shared a story about how the sound card was plugged in from the outlet and also into the computer, and you're like, oh, you don't need to do that. You can just use one; it'll do the job.
Yep, the easier way.
Yeah. So she mentioned how specific and clear you were, and that definitely encouraged me to then take lessons with you. So it's sort of metaphorical passing of the torch, so to speak.
Yeah. Wow, man. And the things you've done, the music you've created, especially the progress and growth I've seen since we've been working together too. I mean, you always had talent, but wow, the growth and the progress. Incredible, man. Yeah, I know she'd be so proud of everything you're doing.
Thank you, Stu.
Yeah. It's really leveled up so much, man. Was there a breakthrough moment where you felt like your music started leveling up like that and started sounding like how you wanted it to?
Yeah, I can probably pinpoint a few moments where I felt like, oh, this is the next step, and this applies to playing guitar as well, and my kind of progress with that. And even though I don't play as much as I used to, very similar in the way where it would be like I would be able to pin myself against other versions of myself by recording myself. And it was almost like this was the thought process. I said to myself, I'm not a guitarist unless I know how to play this song. And then I said, I'm not a guitarist unless I know how to make my own music. I'm not a musician unless I know to do that. And then it sort of progressively became this mission of looking at what I did in the past and seeing where I'm at now. And I think that's really important as a producer, to be able to see your progress on a timeline very clearly. And I think recording yourself, or as you mentioned, finishing songs is so important. And even though I had gone to SAE, for very specifically a course based around electronic music production, and they really did go into taking us onto like mixing desks as well, and looking at Pro Tools and how to mix your tracks and what to avoid and what not to do. What to do and what not to do. And even though I had all this knowledge, the practical side of it still wasn't quite gelling for me. And of course, there's so much information out there on YouTube as well.
Oh, yeah.
And as you've said, the information can be incorrect as well, and also genre specific. And maybe this may have stifled my progress somewhat in terms of me looking at so many different things and loves for different genres, that it was probably like my progress was like exponential. But like once I reached a certain threshold where it was probably, more like this, and then where it clicked. And I felt that was when I was making really cool sort of noises and sounds and making full tracks, but I really struggled with mixing. And I felt like I had one part of the puzzle kind of figured out for the most part. I still didn't even think I had like my own sound necessarily. I still felt like I was copying others, which, to some degree for artists, you'll feel that, oh, I'm just like stealing things. But really our sounds and what we do are just influences, which is in a way still being copied to a certain degree. Experiences are so unique. That's what makes our unique sounds. And I felt that when I started having lessons with you, I think that the first course I did was the Road to Main Stage. even though it covered things that I understood already, really cemented that knowledge in a way that made it clear and concise and understandable and
Usable,
digestible.
right?
Yeah. But, even more so with the one-on-one total lessons with you, it was like having a lens scope on certain issues that I was having, even though I tried to identify as best as I could where I was struggling, which was, mixing and mastering. But also in tandem, it helped the creative side of my workflow. And I used to spend, given the nature of like Complextro and very bass orientated genres where there's just lots of bass sounds going on, just made it a nightmare to mix because there was just, 500 different sounds all competing for attention. And it's like, where do I place things? And, simplifying that workflow process. And I think, you really helped me visualize the bigger picture, like a big marble structure, and you're chiseling away at just like rough details before going into the finer details.
Right. It's so important to have that system, isn't there?
Yeah. And that system really helped me break down what things to do in what order. And I may have done things in different orders, thinking like, I need to do this first because it's more interesting to me right now. It's like, I really need this snare really needs to sound.
It's the first thing I heard.
Yeah. It's the first thing I heard. And then I'm, sitting there for an hour or two tweaking a snare, and the entire time the EQ's been off. It hasn't done anything.
It happens, right? Yeah. You end up going around in circles and having to do things 10 times, or one thing breaks another thing. Yeah, it really matters the order you do it in, huh? But I'm so glad that's helped out so much with Road to Main Stage and the mentoring and stuff too. You can definitely hear it in your music, man. It sounds amazing. The new releases, oh my God. I mean, they just keep getting better and better, as good as any of the other big guys out there. What would you say, with all these things you're learning though, what would you say were some of the biggest things you had to unlearn or let go of in order to achieve this kind of sound and quality?
I think for me, it was an element of perfectionism. I think a lot of people who start producing or doing music in general, or just artists, I would say, and in the realm of comparing yourself to other people. And whilst references, as you've taught me, are used in a specific way where you're able to actually compare what issues your song is having and then being able to rectify those mistakes. So for me, it was, this bass sound or whatever it is in particular that I was working on doesn't sound the same as X artist. And because of that ego, it's ego, wanting to be able to do something to like the best of your ability, but it's also holding you back and not allowing you to finish songs, which is what it was doing to me.
Yeah, and there's so much benefit to finishing those songs, right? Perfection doesn't exist. It's a unicorn,
Yeah.
Well, hopefully unicorns exist. but you just keep chasing it, you'll never catch it. It's always out of your grasp, and you spend so much time and effort. If you just get close to the unicorn, that's probably it. That's just get to that what you think 95% is, and that's probably going to blow everybody away. And later on, you'll listen back to it and love it too. Yeah. There's a point of diminishing returns for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's only so much you're able to, commit to something before it's, I was given the advice of you can't polish a turd.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've heard that one too.
So, I think it's definitely universal. And one of the things that I unlearned, I think one of the biggest things was, like tuning your kicks was one of them as well. I heard that was a really important thing to do. I heard you had to put a separate sub underneath all your basses. And for some genres and some songs, I can probably agree with that, but
pretty rare.
Most of the time, as you've stated, just having it, together and its own thing. It doesn't need to be separate at all.
Yeah.
I had to unlearn that. And what else did I unlearn? I think those were probably the biggest things for me, really.
Yeah, some of the big, I mean, there's so many things. There's so much misinformation on YouTube. It's crazy. And people keep just copying other people's videos and they don't actually know, it's an echo chamber.
I sort of discovered on my own was that like it's okay to use samples and things like that. that
Yeah.
I used to believe it's like you have to make everything on your own. And it was that same process of the thought of I'm not a real musician or producer.
That's that ego again,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's important for us to all think about that when anybody listens to our music on Spotify, it doesn't pop up with a little, this is how this artist made the song. Nobody knows.
Right.
They're just going to listen to the song and be like,
farmed a goat so that they could make the skin for the drum that they're going to then sample.
And they built their own computer from scratch and generated the electricity by riding a bicycle. And it did everything. It's whatever the end product is, really. It's up to you how difficult you want to make it for yourself.
Mm-hmm. I suppose that's also a very important point as well, is that I stopped caring less about what the final product actually was in terms of that perfection of like, it has to be a certain way. Of course, it does to a certain extent of the quality, but I felt more at ease of just being like, this is where I'm at as a producer, and I'll improve with the next song. And letting all of that go.
Exactly, because the benefit
helpful.
The benefit you get from repeating the process multiple times, from finishing that song, mixing it, the lessons you learn that you can then apply to the next one, gives you compounded exponential growth that you just can't get by laboring over songs for months and months at a time. You said before too that having clear feedback and structured help really changed things for you too. What did your workflow look like before that, and what would you say by comparison is different now?
Well, even the level of feedback from other people who are genuinely interested in improving their own music and learning from one another was already a huge component, because I had entered other music groups that were about feedback, but was really, I'm trying to watch my language here, but a circle of happiness that they all were just self-masturbatory. It was very...
Oh, right. Everyone just says everybody's great and nobody gives constructive feedback or something?
It's kind of a little bit of that, and also kind of shitting on other people without actually giving proper feedback. It was like, the guy said to me, based off one of my songs, was like, oh, your kick's not tuned. Does that help? At least that's how when it was written, that's how it came across in his tone. So I didn't realize tuning your kicks was so important. I need to do this every single time to make a banger track.
Yeah.
But having that source of feedback where it's from, genuine criticism that's there to help you against, people pitting their egos against yours, and what they think is right and what you think is right. It was just a massive, and before it was just a massive pissing contest, quite frankly. And being able to bounce ideas off of other people, especially during the Pro Sound Secrets course, where we were able to have these sessions and look in depth about what the track needed, could need less of, and having a very focused lens at the problems and the issues, and not just from yourself, but from other producers that might have a different background within their genre, and what they can then help apply to, help you in ways that you maybe didn't think of before.
Exactly.
So yeah, I feel especially with the Pro Sound Secrets course, how I've mentioned before, just how digestible everything is, and having that content there to look back on and really be able to just check in with any time I'm thinking, I don't quite remember what I should be doing with this compressor at this point, and looking at a video that says, just do this. But then compounding that, being able to put the lessons into practice. And it's kind of like when you have those weekly calls, you have something to show and tell the class and say, this is what I learned and this is what I tried to apply. And how well did I do that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the quality of the feedback you get really matters, right? So I'm really glad you found that helpful. And I really love that everyone else in the group calls always helps out as well too. And everybody's constructively sharing opinions and just trying to help. And, there's no like, you have to do it this way. It's just like, these are some thoughts we have. You could try them out, see if it works for you. If you like it, it's up to you. And everybody grows together and just getting better and better. And again, the progress by the end of Pro Sound Secrets is just huge. How much people's mixdowns transform. You know,
I can hear with other students as well the level at which they have increased in their skills of mixing, and not just in myself. It's, like I said, been exponential, where it's just sort of all this time that we've been, maybe self-taught or something, and then there's just all this growth.
Well, it's so difficult most people, when you're being self-taught, you're only getting little bits and pieces of a puzzle. Actually, you're probably getting little bits and pieces of multiple puzzles that don't belong together. Yeah. Like you say, a lot of the tips are from different genres or from different things that don't go together in the wrong order. And then people are trying to make the full puzzle come together like that. But when you get that full system just laid out, like this is how you do it. Do it in this order, these steps, and it will work every time, no matter what genre. That's what's really valuable, I think. But let's geek out for a second.
Yeah.
What's your current setup look like these days? You're on Ableton, right? But you got any go-to plugins or recent tools you're loving, or what are you digging?
Honestly, I recently purchased Chord Genie from Unison. I haven't tried it yet, but I figured for anyone who might be struggling putting chords or sounds together, especially chords, that's probably the plugin for you. Because I would before rely on sometimes, not every time, look at some kind of chord generator online just to like quickly throw some ideas together. And that's what I recently purchased. But the biggest sort of, I would say, plugin that I have is Serum 2 as well.
Oh, huge update. Yeah.
Even though at the moment I'm not using all the features that it's designed to do, I think it's going to allow me to look into different sort of sound design techniques or like possibilities for me just to like make weird and wonderful sounds. And what else do I use a lot? I would say I use the ozone limiter, but that's only for right now. I'm probably thinking about using other limiters. And honestly, that's more or less it. I don't really do anything beyond that other than using like, EQ8 in Ableton and
mostly stock plugins aside from that then?
Yeah, that's pretty much the main ones I use. Actually, there's also a free what's it called? Auto-tune that I would use called, I think it's like Granulon or something. Or Open Granulon 2 or similar to that. And I would also say that I use a vocoder called Vocodyne.
Ah, okay.
And essentially, the way it works is almost similar to it sounds like a talk box when you use it, but you just record your audio into the mic, and you have a lot of settings to shape the characteristics of the voice through like different wavetables, and it's got its own effects plugins on there. So if you're really going for like that Daft Punk sound, that's definitely the plugin for you if you're into that. And yeah.
Have you tried? Ableton's released a couple of interesting ones lately, or maybe they're not all out yet, but they've got their own vocal tuning one. I think it's called Auto Shift.
Okay.
And there's a chord one, but I think it's only in the beta version. It's coming soon. There's a chord one too.
Yeah.
Looks pretty cool.
I have to say I would want to get more into using stock Ableton stuff, because I feel like I've definitely paid for Ableton, but I don't use all of Ableton.
Just like so many people say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I did. Another plugin that I use that's outside of Ableton is Thermal, and it's just for putting on very quickly some distortion and other kind of filtered effects to basses, drums, whatever it is, just to get an idea of what it could sound like if you manipulate it in a certain way. You could easily achieve the same thing with Ableton racks and just making your own little thing. And there are a lot of racks that people put out as well. I just got something called Bassify. It can be any audio input from like your voice or a drum, and you twist a knob that makes it all bassy and growly, and it does magic.
Amazing. It sounds fun, man. Let's get back onto mixdowns for a second. Because you're doing some amazing ones at the moment. I'm curious, what's something that you might have used to do with your mixdowns that used to trip you up that now you feel way more confident about?
I used to feel very threatened by mixdowns, honestly. The sheer level of just having to rebalance everything with like gain staging and doing specific frequencies. I think my ears just weren't trained for that at that point. It's like I knew what I needed to do, but I just dreaded the thought of having to do that final process. I kind of would do it as I was the mixing process. I would try to EQ things as best as I could so I didn't have to do it later. And of course, you taught me that it doesn't have to be this scary monster.
Yeah,
and
it should be fun.
Yeah, and it has become like a really enjoyable process for me now, even though that there's 100, I'm exaggerating, but 100 bases going on that, they can all be fixed very easily with maybe like a multi-band compressor. And now knowing that I can use that for other than just OTT 9 times in a row.
Yeah, it does a lot more than the OTT setting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, and then being able to sort of sculpt the mixes in a way that I don't have to do these crazy EQs where I'm like finding notches of a specific frequency and taking it out and doing it 5 times in every frequency.
Yeah.
Which what I was taught to a certain degree. It's like, oh yeah, you got to find these problem frequencies.
Wow.
But without having any knowledge of like references. And references is probably the biggest game changer for me. And Reference 2, another plugin that I use heavily that I should shout out, and thank you for putting me on.
You're welcome. I love it too. Yeah, thanks to those guys mastering the mix for making it. It's amazing.
Yeah, fantastic plugin. Being able to compare in real time, that it levels your songs to theirs, to another one that you've chosen, and being able to see where I need to place my EQ to get it sounding similar, but having a wider set of references really helped me just hone in my mixing. Even though now it's definitely a lot better from where it used to be, there's still, for me, improvements that I'm looking at making.
Well, I mean, I think you're doing amazing.
Thank you.
It's going to get otherworldly. Even like your sound design has always blown me away too, man. Like, and I think it's a big part of your style and the bass and low end, bass sound design too. How do you approach building those kinds of sounds in your tracks?
So I use the same sort of process that you taught me in terms of looking at things with a broad stroke. And so if I'm designing any sound, the sort of first couple of things I think about is like, what movement is it doing? And then what its like tone and timbre is. And it just has to be general. And I think a lot of people will overcomplicate sound design, and they think, oh, to get this insane growl, you have to do all these really specific things to get it to do that. But you can achieve a lot more with less. And for me, I really spent a lot of time with Serum. That sort of became my main instrument, like me learning the guitar. I just wanted to figure out how sounds were made. And through that process, I learned how to reverse engineer sounds. And this is where presets come in so handy. You just look at something that someone else has made and learn what did they do to generate that sound. And so now I have a bank of sort of way too many presets and stuff that I've made myself. And yeah, sort of using that thought process of first shaping it and then putting it together like a puzzle piece with Complextro, with the way it is. And the other thing is, which is really important, is just having like a fundamental bass line that's already like a groove, if you were to make a normal song. And once you have that, you can just take bits and pieces from it and preset stuff. I don't necessarily have to make my own sounds, but if it's something that I'm imagining in my head, you can stumble on happy accidents, and that really becomes the creative and fun part of like, separating designing and making your own sounds. So you're not just fiddling with stuff for hours. And yeah, and then listening to your influences and your references and thinking, oh, that particular sound would work really nicely here. And it's like cooking. You take a bit of salt, bit of spice and pepper, and you just throw what you think sounds cool. And that's what I do. I just go, oh, that sounds cool. And then if I think it's, hell yeah, then go for it.
Exactly. It's definitely working, man. I agree. It's kind of like cooking, right? And you could think of your reference tracks are kind of like eating someone else's cooking or going out to a restaurant. And you taste something and you're like, oh, I'm going to make that at home.
Yeah.
You go, I'm going to remake that pasta or that thing. And that's kind of what we'll do with it, even if it's just part of it,
Yeah.
Not the whole dish, but just the salad. Something.
Yeah. and I think it's really important that you try emulating these types of things, because it'll never be the same.
Yeah. Your style always comes through.
Yeah. And
exactly.
For anyone that's struggling, I went through all of that as well for the first how many years of production where it just seemed insurmountable that I'd be able to make the sounds that I'm making. And it's like, I was interested in how Skrillex made scary monsters and nice sprites, and now I'm here.
Yeah, exactly. And you probably, and like you're saying, you wouldn't have expected you ever be at this level, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing, man. If you could send a message back to your young producer self when you were just starting, what advice would you give yourself?
Believe in yourself, have more confidence in yourself. Don't be a perfectionist, and, be patient. These things take time, and it's not about the quantity of practice you put into something. It's the quality of what you practice. It's easy to say, for a boxer, if you taught them how to punch, like this, it wouldn't be very effective. So I think that would, definitely help me a lot if I had that advice. And just have fun with it. Enjoy the process.
So important, right?
The journey is a lot more important than the destination.
Exactly. If it's not fun, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man. You shared so much good advice here today. I really appreciate it so much. What's coming up next for you, aside from we got the album Alive, which is out now? More releases coming up already scheduled for that, or other projects and shows?
Yeah. So this will lead into me talking about the other students on the course as well, because I've ended up collaborating with the previous guests on the show, which is...
Oh, yeah, the other guys from Pro Sound Secrets, yeah.
Yeah, MSKT. We've, spoiler alert, made 3 tracks in one, where we've fused melodic, dubstep, future bass, color bass, and psytrance all into one track, which was quite the beast.
It is.
That's been signed, so we'll just have to wait for the label to sort out the details. And I've also made a song with Frequency Upgrade,
Amazing.
Which is another track I'm really excited for everyone to hear. And I'm planning to collaborate with a few more artists within the course as well.
Awesome.
And there's, one release that is coming out in May called Let's Effing Party. And it's going to be released on G Mafia.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Lots of releases coming up, and it's always so great to see everybody in Pro Sound Secrets collaborating together, and the fusion of styles. Like it's really cool. You can definitely hear everybody in the collaboration. You can hear their input, and it's cool the way you guys meet in the middle.
Yeah, and I think the benefit of collaborating with other people is what you can learn from them, and learning how to work with other people as well.
Yeah. Collaborations are huge for musical growth and what you're going to learn from it. But also good for your musical career too, for opening doors and growing your audience and other things as well. Definitely
that's helped me tremendously as well. Even though I'm not to a big label or anything, just working with other people has allowed me to, we both have audiences that we can share to, and then we cross over that way.
Exactly. So good. I'm looking forward to all those coming out. I guess finally, man, what's the best place for everybody to follow you and check out your music?
You can check me out on Spotify as Daniel Fowler. You can also check me out on SoundCloud, where I put up remixes that Spotify won't allow me to post. I'm also on Instagram as Electric Mirage Fowler. And I don't really use Twitter, to be honest. I do have a Twitter account, but I like to try and keep things as focused as possible. So those are my main 3.
That's probably a good idea. Perfect, man. There's plenty of places where people can follow what you're up to and check out the tunes, and I encourage everyone to go and listen to them. They're amazing, and they just keep getting better every day. And the new album's out now, Alive. Go and check it out. Daniel Fowler, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure to have you here, and thanks for all the advice.
Thank you very much, too. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Huge thanks again to Daniel Fowler for such an open, inspiring conversation, and loads of great advice too. His new album Alive with Zy Cohen is out now on Neon City Records. So go give it a listen. I'll drop all the links in the show notes below. And hey, if you have been stuck chasing perfection, watching endless tutorials, tweaking for hours, but still not getting the clean, powerful, release-ready mixdown sound that you deserve, well, you're not alone. But you don't have to stay stuck. Pro Sound Secrets is my advanced mixdown program for electronic music producers. And it's coming up again soon. Now, it's a proven step-by-step system to help you mix faster, more confidently, and start finally sounding just like the artist that you look up to. Spots are limited though, and doors only open for a few days. So if this is even slightly on your radar, jump on the priority list now and head over to bassclef.com/PSS so you don't miss out. That's BASSKLEPH.com/PSS. Go save your spot, and I'll see you inside.